Well, as you heard there, a lot really does go into the price of a cup of coffee. Well, joining me now to delve into all those different components is Spencer Turer. Spencer is the Vice President of Coffee Enterprises, a tea and coffee consultancy based in the US. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
So first, I want to have you break down some of the major factors behind the recent rise in coffee prices.
So a lot of things have happened at the same time in order to make the Arabica coffee market much stronger. The first that started was the drought in Brazil. And this is not the first time that we've seen a drought in Brazil that adversely affects the coffee trees. Right now, what we're facing is the worst drought in about 90 years in Brazil in the coffee growing regions. And that was the start of the price increases. But in July, we had a frost in Brazil. And frost severely harms and also kills coffee trees. And the frost that we're seeing is worse than the frost in 1994, which caused the coffee price, the coffee market to go up to $2 a pound and spike really high. This is a coffee frost that is similar to the 1978 frost, which was devastating. The risk with coffee frosts is that it not only affects the coffee this year, but it also affects the coffee harvest and the productivity for the next 2 years, because Brazil's on a 2-year coffee cycle, meaning an on year has very strong, huge production and huge harvests. And then the following year has a slightly smaller harvest, but with the frost happening now, most of this year's crop has already been picked. So this is really adversely affecting next year's crop, the crop after that, and possibly into the third or fourth year, which can offset and change the supply-demand curves for the global coffee market.
So then how does that relate to the overall increase that we're seeing in global food prices?
Well, the overall increase is not just for the agricultural crop. What coffee is facing is similar issues that other agricultural crops are facing, which is increased logistics costs and delays in logistics because of the lack of availability for coffee containers and the price of shipping coffee. And I'm sure this is similar to other agricultural crops that are global. What used to cost $2,000 to move a container of coffee from Colombia to New York, or $2,500 from Brazil to New York, is now costing over $6,000 or $7,000. A container of coffee from Indonesia to the U.S., which used to cost about $3,000, now costs $20,000 just to move the same cargo. And then once that coffee reaches the domestic market, the cost of shipping for trucks is huge. The issues is not being able to find equipment to move coffee, probably the same way that you're having issues finding equipment to move other agricultural crops. And the drivers, because of COVID, trying to find drivers on the domestic routes is very challenging.
So are there any sort of workarounds to address some of these challenges that are specific to the coffee industry?
From the logistics side, it's really hard to look forward and say, how can we do contingency planning for the lack of containers? Because you really don't want containers to be sitting in storage for a long period of time. Being able to make sure that the human element, the people working on the docks in the producing countries as well as the consuming countries, and we want to make sure that the logistics folks are safe and secure, and they are good health practices so they can continue to move the products and we can bring the coffee to market or any of the other agricultural crops to market. I mean, this is really a global issue. The coffee market is a huge function for us, and trying to make sure that all of our clients and the people that we work with on a regular basis have good quality coffee and have the availability of coffee to get into the lattes and the espressos that the consumers are looking for on a regular basis.
Now, we're hearing from a lot of coffee owners. We did see that James Freeman, the owner and CEO of Blue Bottle Coffee, he says there's an 80% markup, which is standard across the coffee business when it comes to some of these higher end brews. Is there an argument for paying producers more even while this is happening, especially since there is such a high markup for some of these products?
And that's a great question. The issue that we've had for the last few years is the commodity price, the global price for coffee, has been below the production cost. So the farmers haven't been able to reinvest in their farms' activities. They haven't been able to invest in the families. There's been a lack of credit, and there's been a lot of food insecurity. If we're able to find ways to increase the price of coffee to the farmer, that's the farmer selling cherries, selling parchment, and selling export quality coffee, that would solve a lot of problems in the coffee business, because then we'd have more availability of higher quality coffee. We want to make sure that the folks on the farms, now these are family farms, multi-generational farms, and it's not just the price that we're paying for coffee, it's we really need to make working on the coffee farms attractive so that we're not losing the younger generation to the cities, to other vocations. So there's a multiple challenges that we have in the coffee business. But yes, first and foremost, we need to make sure the farmers make more money. They're bearing the biggest amount of risk. They're started the risk cycle, but they don't really have the opportunity to participate in the benefits of the higher prices that coffee earns once it's roasted and once it's turned into a beverage.